welcome to P1 training. This session will be the second session of the work package number 4, and in this time we will focus on the work developed by AIT, and they will be presenting also the WEFACT tool and their contribution to the AMASS project. Okay, so I transfer them presenting rights.
Okay. Good afternoon from AIT now, where we start the presentation with a very, very short overview of what WEFACT can do for us. Then a few remarks on the standards we plan to implement in the next months or so. And then we get a presentation live with the WEFACT tool as it's available now in the SVN of the AMASS project. So,
can you see something?
Yes, I can see it.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. It should work now, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before my colleagues Sebastian and Corbinian show you how to work with WEFACT, I'd like to say a word about WEFACT, and yes, after the presentation we will have time for your question if you want. Yeah. What is WEFACT? The acronym WEFACT is for Workflow Engine for Analysis, Certification and Test. What is the goal of WEFACT? It's supporting for maintaining standard compliant development process. Yes, what is the methodology used here? We have WEFACT framework. It provides a flexible infrastructure for V&V processes. Second, external programs can be executed by WEFACT, like Microsoft Threat Modeling tool, for example. Then the program's output tool, execution results, and process reports. And what are the features and benefits of WEFACT? Reduction of cost and effort for the certification of critical systems. Then automated generation of safety and security documentation, transparent requirements management. WEFACT facilitates traceability between the requirements and actions. And last but not least, the accurate information can be used for reporting and audits. Yeah. Before my colleagues show you in reality how WEFACT looks like and how WEFACT works, I want to describe the user interface of WEFACT briefly. You can see on the left side the list of the requirements. Here you can create a new requirements, for example, one of standard you want to model, and in the part 3, you can describe the requirements and edit name, description, status, and so on and so on. In part 2, you have the processes, the predefined engineering processes, and in part 4, you can describe it. You have here name, description, and so on. In part 5, here you can find the child processes. And okay. We have other parts in the user interface. Number 1, here you can see the linked processes. Number 2, here you can see the status. In this case, is status ready, and number 3 is process, as executable process. In this case, you can the process execute. Number 4 are linked requirements, and number 5, here you can find the linked tool. Yes, and yeah.
Okay, maybe just a few words about the standard which can be modeled. We are actually working on standards. There are safety and there are security standards, and some are already more or less introduced. What we actually plan the next months is an implementation of the SAE security standard SAE J3061, which is a standard of recommended practices for the automotive industry. There is, however, in the meanwhile, an attempt in the ISO to further develop the ISO 26262 towards an extended standard. And one of the novelties will be an NXF, which is about security. So we could also implement this one. It's still under discussion what we actually will do. Depends also a bit on the partners who will collaborate with us in use cases, what we'll actually then realize. Another standard we're interested in is the 62441 IEC standard, IEC 62443, sorry. This is a security standard for the industrial control industry, and we are working on that now in another project. But of course, if we implement it generically, we can also use it in AMASS as well. So this is about security standards we plan to implement. For safety, we did already implementations in former times. Implementations means usually implementations in EPFC. It will be presented soon now. EPF, Eclipse Process Framework Composer, can be used to define the requirements and processes, which then can be imported in WEFACT. This will be shown soon. Irrespective of which kind of standard we import there, can be safety, can be security standard. We can also define, of course, the standard conformant processes within WEFACT only. They can then even be exported into EPFC via the UMA format. So we are quite free in principle. Okay, some things I know still need to be tested more. Depends on if you can export all, but okay. On the other hand, we have the connection to the AMASS framework with the results of WEFACT. As shown in the short introduction, WEFACT provides processes to which represent the assurance processes, which finally lead to some evidences for the arguments. The arguments are, of course, in AMASS edited with the OpenCert tool, the editor, the assurance case editor, and this always references evidences for the, well, for the lowest goals, so to speak, for the most fine-grained goals. And WEFACT can provide the process and run this process to provide these evidences. The interface to include the evidence from WEFACT into AMASS is not yet finalized. WEFACT is, however, able to create a kind of report file in XML format, which can be parsed by some parser. And in this way, also the evidences from WEFACT can be interpreted and can be integrated in the AMASS framework database, which way would be a point of discussion. Okay, I think that's enough now from the overview perspective, and we can go right now into the demonstration of the tool WEFACT. By the way, I should also mention that we have provided a new version with some improvements, some bug fixes, a little bit of new functionalities, which is now available in the SVN and can be used by all of you. This presentation is, of course, based on this new version, which is a little bit of extension compared to what was originally delivered in autumn with the original deliverable. Okay, so much from my side now, and now let's go to the presentation.
Okay, so we have already prepared some requirements from the J3061, and if I, as Peter already showed you and explained the interface to you, I'll go a bit deeper into that. So we have the first requirement, define scope and boundaries. We have a certain name, we have the description, and we have a status for the requirement. The status can be changed by fulfilling a requirement manually. So where no real action has to be taken, you only need to add a certain document or something. So you go to fulfill manually, then you would add a file and say the requirement is fulfilled. There's also another way to create a okay. Someone told me that we have to remove this. You can also fulfill requirements by processes, so you can link requirements and processes, as you can see here. It says link processes, but we don't have processes yet in this project. So we created some processes with the EPF composer, and as you can see, we have preliminary functional design, threat analysis, risk assessment, and so on. And we also defined the predecessor successor structure, so the workflow. So you have to, in this case, you have to first conduct a preliminary functional design, then the threat analysis, then the cybersecurity concept, and so on. What we're going to do now is we are going to import this into WEFACT. And here we have our processes. So because we defined the preliminary functional design as predecessor for threat analysis and risk assessment, so I can see here my successor is threat analysis and risk assessment, and if I select the process threat analysis and risk assessment, I can see preliminary functional design is the predecessor of this. So I can only execute this process if I execute the process before that successfully.
As you can see, in the top of the process details, is the button or there's like an image for that is ready to execute. So you can execute it if you link a tool. You create a tool and then link a tool to the process you want to execute, or you can fulfill it manually too. So if you want to fulfill the process because you already got the output files, you can link them here and you fulfill the process like not executing it, but you already got what you need. You can link the requirements to the processes like we show it now. So we want to link the process 1.
Yeah, we want to link preliminary functional design with defined scope and boundaries. So we say add link and select add defined scope and boundaries. And we can see it's linked in the requirements part and in the process details. Of course, you can also do it the other way around, so I can see all the processes from the requirements perspective and so on.
But there is some kind of restriction that you can't link your requirements and processes double vice versa, and you can't, there's also a restriction on processes when you define predecessors and successors, so you can't create loops. So there is no workflow that executes just in a loop.
Okay, for the next part, we're also gonna link threat analysis and risk assessment to this one. We can link anytime we want, but we cannot execute the process right now. So we need to conduct the preliminary functional design process beforehand. In this case, we will say fulfill manually because we have already modeled we have already prepared model.
We will show this model in the execution when we execute the tool. And we say as a comment or a rationale, we say the model is already created and is provided in the output file. And then we say okay. Then our process turns in the status he was successful. And if we look on the left side, the requirement got a change in the status too. It changed from not fulfilled to fulfilled, because if the process is executed and is successful, the linked requirement gets fulfilled, sorry.
So also the successor process got reached status ready because it was not ready before. So we can see here the successor of this one is not ready. and this one was also not ready, but now it's ready now. What we're going to do now is we're going to execute a tool, the Microsoft Threat Modeling tool, and use the file that we provided before as output, as input for this one. Yeah.
So now we will show how easily it is in WEFACT to create a tool. We got a tool explorer, but we have to create a tool now. So we decide to create a new tool. We give it a name. We will use now the Microsoft Threat Modeling tool. You don't have to provide a description. You do it just for understanding.
I just have to look it up.
If you want to create a tool, you have to link the exe file for WEFACT, so WEFACT can open the tool from itself. Yes, and we have to define that it is a manually executed external tool, because the tool type is how you use the tool. If this tool will be used outside of WEFACT, so WEFACT doesn't execute the tool, you have to do it yourself. It will just open the tool. So now we got a new tool, and we will now, yes, you can see or change your tool in the tool details part. And afterwards, you created the tool, you can link a tool to your process. So now we say we add a tool, and then we say OK. And now our process changed to executable. So this little, how you call it, is a slash. There's a flash. Yes. Yeah. So the button changed to be, the button is now ready. Now we want to execute it. As we created the project, we defined an SVN folder where we have to store all output and input files, so they can be, so they will be loaded up to the server where you want to store your files.
So everybody in the project can access it. So it's not just that you can access it, but everyone who's part of the project has access to these files. So we're going to start it, and as we use it as input, we just called the program from command line, and this is the process model, the threat model that we created. What we're going to do now is say we want to create a full report, generate the report, and override this one. And now we have created a report. We want this report to be in WEFACT. So when I close this, WEFACT checks the SVN folder for any changes, and as a new file has been created, it wants to add this file as output of this process. So we say conducted analysis. Okay. So the status of the process changed to successful. So to green. We can see this has become the file we created has become an output for the process, and we can also say, show me where the file is.
As you can see on the left side, there is in the Process Explorer now the next step. So the next process turned into ready. So now you have to execute this process. But now in this demonstration, it's not part of this demonstration.
We won't go too deep into that now.
Yes.
Okay. So the threat analysis requirement has changed to fulfilled because its process has been fulfilled. You can also add more processes to.
You can add more processes to the requirement, so you have to fulfill multiple processes to fulfill the requirement. And if you double click here, you get the corresponding process.
Yeah, you can also do the same from a parent process. So I think we didn't explain
we didn't explain it.
So as you can see, we have the linked requirements, but in this case there are none. But you can see the sub processes. You can see the sub processes. You can also see how much of them have been fulfilled. So as we know, 2 of 5 have been fulfilled. We are at the status 40%, and we see the status of the process also. So we have successful, and the other one is ready. So this is actually, yeah, a mirror of this Explorer. But you can also access these processes directly. Yeah, we can also add users to the project and remove users from the project. So I'll just add Peter. And if I go there again, I can see Peter is inside the project. We have certain roles that allow you to conduct certain actions. So you can create a role and you get rights like you can execute the process, you can edit the process, you can change links and something. So we have maybe tester.
A tester should not create requirements. He just executes processes, and then afterwards he is finished. Or maybe he can. Yeah, maybe he can. Yes, no. But
yeah, we'll just use that now.
Afterwards, you can, if you edit a person to your project, you can change his roles with manage roles. So if you click the user who is inside the project, like Peter, is now his current role is default, so he has no rights inside the project. But maybe you want to have him you should give him the rights of a tester so he can execute some processes. Afterwards, and then you assign the new role, and now Peter has another role. It's some kind of user management inside the project. And last but not least,
we can also execute the project, export the project. Sorry. And if we export the project, we will not right now export it as a standard. So we don't have fulfilled status at all if we import it again. So status will be erased because we only want the standard to be exported, and I won't save it there. It's here. And what we created here is actually just an XML file. Then we say switch project. Right now we're reusing a window that we use where we can also create a new project, because we want to show you that how the import looks. This is import.
Now you can see how we provide the SVN folder where all the files get stored. So the project knows where the files should be stored. And then we switch the project. This is now an empty project, so you can't see there is no content in it. And then we want to import the standard, and then we select it. And afterwards, the already created content from the last project is now imported into this project. So the idea behind this is that we model standards completely inside WEFACT. Afterwards, we can export them, and a user can import the standard he needs, and then he can fulfill it. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your attention. Are there questions, remarks? There is, I might mention, there is available, of course, a user manual in the same directory. I think it's still on the status before these very last changes.
Yeah,
there
we're
will be an
going
update
to update this until I think Wednesday or until during the next week.
During the next week there will be an update. Only minor things have changed, so most of the functionality is described in this manual now already as it is now. But in a few days there will be a new version. If you have questions, you're welcome, of course, to ask us now or when you are trying it out, and just come back to us, ask if you need some support.